Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call this regular meeting of the Burnsville City Council to order. It is our tradition to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's meeting is being conducted both in person and online, and all council members are present. Councilmember Workman is absent this evening. He is ill, and but our staff and council members are present in the chamber. The public may attend in person, or the public can also watch us on burnsvillemn.gov/meetings or Comcast Channel 16 or 859. The public can also join us on Zoom, zoom.us/join. More information is available on the meeting webpage and in the council agenda packet. The next item on the agenda is announcements and a presentation. Our announcements have to do with all of our upcoming meetings. Regular council meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, January 3rd at 5:30 p.m. and Tuesday, January 17th at 5:30 p.m. We have a work session that's scheduled for Tuesday, January 10th at 5:30 p.m. and a special work session for interviewing a youth commissioner on Tuesday, January 3rd at 5 p.m. And that meeting will be held in the conference room D. Unless noted, all meetings of the council are held here in the chambers. This evening is also very special for us. We have C&H Architects who will be presenting a Fire Station 1 Design Award. So if I could have Mr. Quinn Houston and Brooke Jacobson to please come forward. Yes, and I would say that our chief will be receiving the award, and then there will be photographs taken later.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Good evening. As you know, I'm Quinn Hudson, Principal of C&H Architects, and also with me tonight is fellow Principal Brooke Jacobson. We're really pleased to make the announcement that Burnsville Fire Station number 1 was awarded the Gold Award to the Firehouse Magazine Station Design Award, which is a national award. It's the top award in that category. Totally together, there were over 61 applicants for all categories, and so this is very selective, and we're very excited to be able to share that with everybody tonight. From the process, I have to, definitely note that this commitment that the City Council and the Fire Administration team has towards to each and every firefighter is really evident in the process, and this has had a big part of the award. The judges noted specifically in the award response that the project was a progressive response to the awareness of mental health and stress relief within the fire station, which is very an intentional part of the design that we were putting together. So,
we at C&H Architects are very proud of the design of Station 1 and that it is breaking new ground in providing a healthy and highly functional facility, meeting the challenges of today's firefighters, as well as being prepared for tomorrow's fire service. So with that, we'd like to thank City Council and all the staff that were highly involved on the design committee, and as well as all of our staff at C&H Architects for everyone's hard work and efforts to collaborate on this award-winning fire station design.
So before you present the award to the chief, I'd like to just speak on behalf of the city council and how proud we are of our fire chief and all of our firefighter paramedics and the people on the team, the facilities team that put the principles together and stuck by those principles in the work that was done, because it was the most smoothest process that we went through. We, with every step of the way, we really acknowledged the difference between staff work and policy work. And staff did a great job on the operations side. So to our city manager, to our fire chief, and to the whole team, it was important for us to make sure that our firefighter paramedics and what they needed, we build a building that's going to address their health safety needs, their mental health needs, their, and most of all, because when we take care of them, they take care of the citizens that we serve, and that we have a building that will serve our citizens into 30 years. So, thank you. And so,
Yeah,
Chief?
absolutely. At this time, we'd like to present the Gold Award plaque to Chief Jungman.
Yeah. Let's see, where is our photographer? Yeah, can you take the presentation first, and then I
Okay.
will come, and then, yeah,
Why don't we just go like that way?
yeah. And then if the council can, and I will step down, and we have everybody.
I'm so proud of you.
This one?
Yeah, wait, no, there's gotta be a top, oh, here we
Here
go.
we go. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Now we're doing it.
There we go. I think we got it. Hey, it's nothing.
We're good.
It's
We're good.
tradition. It's tradition.
Yeah, it's a tradition. It is a tradition. I will do my reminder that
I'm
if
gonna go
you
this
can't
way.
see me, I cannot see you. So I think I got everybody. All right, 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
We did. Andy, you're right.
Hopefully 2023, we'll go that way every time.
Few more pictures.
Well, yeah, I think we just have a reminder.
The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the council on an item that is not on a printed agenda and not an application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council? Anyone in the audience? Mrs. Henderson, is there anyone on Zoom?
No, there is not.
Thank you. We then will move on. The next item to the agenda is additions to the final agenda, and this is for emergency items only. City Manager Lindberg, are there any emergency items to come before the body?
Nothing from staff, Mayor.
Thank you. Members of the council. Thank you. We now move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of items that's considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. However, an item on a consent agenda can be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes an item on a consent agenda to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? Mrs. Henderson, is there anyone on Zoom?
No, there is not.
Okay. Members of the council, anyone wants an item to be pulled? Mr. Lindberg, does staff have an item to be pulled?
Nothing from staff, Mayor.
With that, I would like a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. The first item on the regular agenda is a resolution approving an updated Heart of the City Public Space Guidelines. Our Assistant Community Development Director, Ms. Regina Dean, is presenting, and I think Ms. Deserud, our city engineer, is also going to be partnering with her. Mrs. Dean, You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This was a collaborative effort, so I'm going to start the presentation, and then Jen's going to wrap things up, and then certainly if there are any questions at the end, we can certainly both stand for questions. So, Heart of the City Design Framework Update. This was before you. It was about a 9-month process. And really the goal of the Heart of the City Design Framework Update was to refresh our 1999 plan that had been in place for over 22 years. We had done some work with the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, looking at Heart of the City and how that could expand over to the west side of I-35W. And then we updated our zoning code to be a transit-oriented development zoning code. And a lot of the elements that were in this document were moved over to the city code so that developers didn't have to flip-flop between the two documents, and it was nice and cohesive in one spot for people to get all of their information. We also took that as an opportunity, as we were doing the update, to evaluate the current conditions around Heart of the City. We actually did a walking tour of the area and documented all the things that were issues, and then also looked for opportunities actually walking in the space. We had the opportunity to also evaluate just all the studies and documents that we had done over the years, and then also had an opportunity to reassess our special assessment policy. This is a really special place, Heart of the City, and we wanted to take the time to see who pays for these elements and how is that equitable. So council and staff took the time to do that with the help of our consultants' input and information analysis. We did have an opportunity to have a robust public engagement, not only with council, but with members of the community. And I'll go over that in the next couple of slides. So this was before you with our consultant team a number of times throughout 2021 and into 2022. We also had the opportunity to have a joint workshop with our Planning Commission, Economic Development Commission, and the Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Commission to allow them to provide input. That was really cool to see them kind of play off of each other's ideas and really collaborate and give some nice input that was really kind of well balanced as well. Engagement, we had the opportunity to have touch points with over 400 people through pop-up events, through stakeholder engagement, like one-on-one phone calls with business owners. We sent out direct surveys to apartment tenants within Heart of the City to obtain feedback. How are they using the space and what are they experiencing? And one of my favorite opportunities was the outreach that we did at Nicollet Middle School, really hearing from the youth and the ideas that they have and just the great energy that they brought. We also had a staff project management team. The people that are our maintenance folks were part of that team, the people that, are day in and day out. Shoveling and plowing and taking care of the light bulbs in the area. And we want to make sure that the people that are out there, that they were part of this plan as we look to implementation in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen. She's going to talk about the framework contents and get into a little more detail about what the final product looks like.
Yeah.
Or the draft final product, should I say.
Well, thank you for all of the great work that you guys are doing, and I'm looking forward to hearing about Jen's portion of this as well. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. And as Regina said, this was a really big collaboration between multiple departments. And so I'm glad we could tag team on this presentation to present the findings or the framework content. So this slide here just shows everything that's in that document that Regina was holding up. It talks about what we did, the public engagement, the existing conditions analysis, guiding principles, and then the different character districts that are existing today and how we can try and make those more cohesive across the district. There's streets and streetscapes, landscaping, public spaces, gateways, and wayfinding signage and public art was a chapter, parking, screening, sustainability, and stormwater management, and then maintenance, and then my favorite chapter is implementation, because I like to do stuff. So this is the contents, and there was a link to the full draft that's on our website now. some of the council concerns that we wanted to address when we did the presentation with Damon Farber was that, what is this document? How is it going to be used? And is it rigid? And the answer is no. The answer to that is the point of the document is to establish the minimum expectations for staff, commissions, elected officials, but it's flexible. And so we wanted to make sure that the council was noting that it is a flexible document. It provides priorities and strategies to help initiate those public improvements, but there's, public engagement with each of those independent projects as we move forward. And then how to use this document is a part of the document as well. We have a lot of other plans, so we're using it in conjunction with those other plans. It's a guide. It's not a final design. It's going to inform that detailed design that we would be bringing back before the council and to the public and then back to the council. So really making sure that we are using it as a guidance document, but not a final design. And it's not an engineering document. There's not a detailed, widths and measurements and things like that. So it's really a big picture document that we will use for guidance for future public improvements. So the implementation plan, there's a table of implementation, and it prioritizes things that we can do in the near term, the long term, high priority, and things that we're doing ongoing. And some things to highlight are in the near term. So a paver replacement plan is something that we brought before the council. It's a plan to prioritize which areas we want to replace the pavers in first, and then we'll come back before council and put those projects in the CIP. There's a Heart of the City District Parking Management Plan, which we have in the CIP for 2023, but it's expanded more to a citywide parking management plan. So we've expanded that scope. We'll be back before the council to order that project in the future. And then in 2024 CIP, we have a wayfinding signage plan that we want. That's part of the implementation. So that Heart of the City is a cohesive district. Right now it is a little bit, a lot of different elements that don't make it as cohesive, and we think, and the plan indicates that we could do better with that. So with that, Regina and I are here for any questions. Our recommendation is adopting the resolution, approving the updated plan.
Okay, thank you. It's well done, and I know that we did a lot of work through our work sessions, and thank you for following direction and doing getting out there and doing the engagement. That was very important for us to make sure that our community was involved. And that was great that you involved the youth from Nicollet, because I remember when we did the Heart of the City at the high school and our middle school were all involved in that process. So that was great, because they're going to be living here and they need to have a voice. So any comments for Mrs. Dean or Mrs. Deserud?
Good job.
Yeah, very well done. Thank you so much. And with that, I need a motion to adopt the resolution.
Move to approve.
Councilmember Keeley makes the motion.
Second.
Second by Councilmember
I just wanted to see
Gustafson.
if you were going to do it.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much.
You're both being played.
The next item is the resolution of support to submit the Greenwood Drive sidewalk project to MnDOT for active transportation grant funding. And Mrs. Deserud, this is your item.
Yes, thank you. So there is a sidewalk gap on Greenwood Drive between County Road 5 and then along the south and east side of Greenwood Drive. This apartment building here, Leah's Apartments, is an independent apartment building for adults with disabilities. And then Greenwood Apartments is just, I think, a market rate apartment. But we had heard that there were people with disabilities walking in their, with walkers and wheelchairs in the street of Greenwood Drive to get out to County Road 5 for either transit or the amenities that are out there for, restaurants or shopping or whatnot. So MnDOT has an active transportation grant that we thought might be a good candidate. The estimated project cost, so the active transportation grant will pay for 100% of the construction costs, but it won't pay for any of the project delivery costs. So there's no essential match on construction like federal funds are an 80-20 match. This is 100% construction, but we would have to deliver the project using our staff time, any construction administration, permits, materials testing, and we estimate that to be about $30,000 for this project. So the timeline, back in September, MnDOT issued that they were looking for letters of intent. It's a little misleading. It didn't mean that we were intending to apply, but it meant that we might have a project that would fit the criteria. So I did submit, and I heard back from MnDOT that this does meet the criteria. It's a good candidate, and they recommended that we apply. So I'm here tonight to request the council that we do apply. The application is due on the 30th. Another thing to note, Dakota County has a grant writer, and they have offered us to have that for free of charge. So we are using a resource. And with that, I stand for questions, and the staff recommendation is to adopt the resolution.
I don't have questions, but I commend you for checking out to see if there was an opportunity for us to get funds to make this stretch accessible to our residents who need a sidewalk. So that, I'm glad that you did find that out and then come for us to say, well, this is how much it's going to cost and this is how much it would mean for us to deliver the project. And so thank you very much for that. Councilmember Schultz?
Thank you. And I believe I checked on this, but I just wanted to make sure. So the sidewalk that we're putting in is a 6 foot wide, is that correct?
Yeah, we're proposing a 6 foot wide concrete sidewalk because we don't have room for anything wider.
Right, and that's what I was checking on, was we could not get to that 10 feet.
Right.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much for this. Thank you for, yes, finding the grant possibility. I would also like to thank Dakota County. That's very helpful to do the grant writing for us. Definitely won't turn that down. So thank you very much. All of this looks really good, and we'll cross our fingers, right? Yeah.
Councilmember Gustafson?
I also would like to thank the staff for looking for ways to get this done. I know that we're all aware of Mike O'Brien. He's actually had been advocating this for several years with us, and they finally found a way to figure out a way to get it done if we can get the grant. So Mike's gone to Tennessee now, so he doesn't live here anymore, but him advocating for people with disabilities is paying off, and I think that's nice to see, and I hope he sees this because he's a big part of getting this done. So thank you for your perseverance in this.
Okay. Councilmember Keeley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. The need has probably been out there for quite a while, but for this grant, what other options would we have to put a sidewalk in there?
So we could have them petition to build the sidewalk, and they'd be assessed 100% of the costs. That's our current mechanism.
Yeah.
And have they ever petitioned or requested prior to this?
Well, so that resident, Mike O'Brien, had made a request, and I had said, well, you could petition, and he said they won't. The apartments can't afford it.
Okay.
So they didn't make the request formally through petition because they couldn't pay for it.
Are these apartments for folks with disabilities? Is it subsidized by the county or the state or the federal government in any way?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I mean, there's obviously a cost consideration that they were not able to overcome. And I know we've had sidewalk discussions in the past that our early forefathers and mothers did not choose to put sidewalks in, and we're very disappointed today because we have a lot of areas of the city that could use it. This one, and maybe especially in particular because of the needs of the folks there. So thank you. I'm crossing our fingers, hope we get the grant.
Okay. With that, members of the council, I need a motion to adopt the resolution.
I move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay, and a motion carries. And good luck. Yeah. The next item is to consider Parkview Flats rental license suspension. Presenting this evening is Fire Chief B.J. Jungman. Chief Jungman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. As you see in your background, there's a lengthy background and history here with Parkview Flats that reaches back to May of this year, and there's a proposed resolution to suspend the rental license of Parkview Flats in your background packet. So I'll give you a little bit of history that we've experienced since May of this year. Parkview Flats property is 313 units with 3 buildings on Burnsville Parkway East. It's owned by Bridge WF2 Parkview Flats LLC. It is managed by Bridge Residential PM LLC, and you can see a clip of their values there on the right-hand side of the screen. We've had an extensive history since May of this year. May 10th, we conducted our first annual fire inspection there. We walk through the common areas as part of the rental license every year. This is a scheduled inspection that the property works with us to schedule. They're well aware of this inspection, and we found 57 violations amongst the 3 buildings, which is an extremely high number for 3 buildings, and they were concerning violations. We went back a little over 30 days later on June 14th, and we still had 57 violations. And then we went back on July 26th, and we still had 57 violations. We had no work amongst that 3 months of any repairs on any of those 3 buildings. We went back on August 1st for a fire alarm, and still had no changes, and then started to have fire alarm issues in the 1513 building. I'll talk about the fire here in a minute, but on August 8th, we found 2 floors that had no lighting in the common areas, so it was completely dark in there. Your regular pendant lights or wall lights that light a common area, it was completely dark in that entire hallway, no electricity in the common area. So residents would have to go through a dark hallway to get out of the building. And this is when we involved the regional manager. We then reached out to the regional manager and met with the regional manager on August 8th. We came back on August 24th, and we still had 44 violations. We came back August 30th and walked through with the vice president of the company and found 2 additional violations. We went through on September 14th, we asked the rental inspection department to help us and go through each unit for life safety inspections, and found a number of violations there. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we still had 31 violations. And then November 9th, with the vice president and the attorney at their request, we walked through all 3 buildings. Again, they scheduled it, and we found additional violations, and we were up to 47, and we actually found them doing fire sprinkler work in the garage without a permit. Again, they had requested and scheduled this inspection. November 11th, we had a concerning fire, and we found more violations, so we're back to 51. Now, December 6th, we did see some progress on some of the repairs, and we were down to 21, but we did find a need for some additional inspection by a professional engineer over some concerns on the stairways and the structural integrity of the buildings. So I can tell you that there's no other property in town that has gotten this much attention this year. There's no other property in town with this amount of violations or this much concern. So we inspected the life safety with Mr. Chris Forsland and his folks. We did the initial inspection on September 14th, and there's been 2 re-inspections conducted. And as of last week, we still had 22 rental inspection violations open amongst the 3 buildings, in addition to the fire code violations that are open. We've had 3 fires in this building, and this is just the 1501 building. We've had 3 fires there. The picture you see is from the August 6th fire. I bolded the November 11th fire. That was a fire on the 3rd floor in the east wing. And what I can tell you is that these buildings were built prior to the requirements to have fire sprinkler systems. So the occupants of the 313 units rely on the other fire protection features, such as fire doors to close, sheetrock to be intact, and fire alarms to operate. In my entire career, I have never been to an apartment fire where the common area horns did not sound. And in this building, there were no alarms sounding when we got there, and there was smoke on 3 floors. Our firefighters assisted at least 10 people out of the building that were choking through the smoke. They would have had an earlier notification of the fire if the horns would have sounded. That wouldn't have been left that way from a fire alarm company. I don't know how it got there, but but it is of extreme concern of mine that when you don't have a fire alarm system that sounds, that is the only protection for these folks in these 313 units. We had another fire in there November 24th. Thankfully, the alarm sounded. But back on November 11th, we didn't let them reoccupy until they could get their alarm system in working order. Now, their alarm system is in working order for now, but their alarm systems are past their usable life and have to be replaced. They're original, it looks like. A little bit about the service demand. All this kind of comes together when you look at community risk, right? We've had 460 fire and EMS responses to the 3 addresses since 2018. 236 of those are medicals, 121 fire alarms, 16 elevator rescues, and 7 of those elevator rescues were in the 1513 building this year alone. Let me give you a comparison of that compared to another 3 address, couple hundred unit multifamily building in our town. In that comparable, we have 343 calls for service, 256 of them are medicals. So that leaves, about 90 of them for other responses. We have 39 fire alarms compared to the 121 at Parkview Flats. We have 4 elevator rescues compared to 16. So I definitely see a trend that is concerning at this building, and we've tried to work with the management. My following slides here are going to give you an idea of the property condition we've seen since May. We've seen trash rooms full of trash. That's a fire hazard. We've seen trash piled in the hallway when the trash room doors didn't work. You see exit lights that are missing on the right. You see emergency lights that are broken on the left. Things that are easily seen by anybody walking through maintaining this building. You see fire doors that don't close. And I can't tell you the utmost importance of these fire doors sealing. Even a crack there allows for hot, toxic gases to escape from one corridor or from one unit to another. So on the left, you see a door that doesn't close. On the right, you see a door closer that's hanging off the door. Here's a video of a door that's got a clearly broken door closer. We go to another one. This is the entrance to one of the laundry rooms, and you can see how far off that fire door is. That doesn't even close. It's not like it doesn't even latch. That fire door does not even try to close. If you try to close it manually, you can't. We found open sheetrock that clearly repairs have been done, and they never came back to re-sheetrock it, again, multiple times. We respond to fires out there, and you got handrails that are off. If you look here, they've got plastic bags for months over where they have sheetrock that needs to be repaired. Again, that's a fire-rated sheetrock from the hallway into the fire door, or into the unit, and then you also see it in the stairwell. Again, that's the only protection of that stairwell is that sheetrock. And the sheetrock is missing and replaced with plastic that's duct taped on the wall. Here we have a occupant that complained about mold in here, and you see mold on the left. This is in one of the bathrooms in the unit, and then on the other one, they were remodeling it, and they put up plastic, and it's been that way for months, according to the occupant. And so that's what they're living with, is that's their 2 bathrooms to work from. We've seen disconnected exhaust pipes off the washer. On the right, you see that the chain's hanging down. There should be a fusible link there for the garbage, so if the dumpster starts on fire, that slide comes closed so that the fire doesn't go up the trash chute. Again, a non-sprinkler building, the only protection they have are these features. On the left, you see water, a hole into the underground garage where it's washed out. On the right, you see where there's concrete spalling, and down below where the concrete's falling on the bottom right to the parking deck. We see an inordinate amount of water here into this building. And on the left, you see that's the entry from the garage into the property. And on the right, you see the parking garages where water continues to rush in there. This is in the basement of one of the units where you have water in there. And then you see the moldy sheetrock. Again, the utility rooms all summer in all 3 All three buildings were wet all summer long, and not just in the utility area, but into the storage rooms. It was prevalent. It wasn't due to fires. This was commonplace. You also see, this is another very concerning one to me. On the left, if you can make it out, there's a smoke detector that was hidden by, in a ceiling. So that smoke detector should have been mounted in that drop ceiling. It was hidden up above pipes. And the only reason we found it is there was a water leak up there, and it took out the drop ceiling. On the right, you see, again, a corridor smoke detector that is hanging off the wall. Here's what the sprinkler system in the 1501 garage looked like. It was shut down, and there were pipes busted at the connections. They finally got this repaired in the last 2 months, but it took 39 sections of pipe to replace in that garage. Here's how they repair things. That where I was showing you the smoke alarms up there, this is where the pinhole water leak was. They cut a piece of what looks like garden hose and put a pipe clamp over it. Where there's drains from air conditioners, they put and cut holes in drain pipe rather than plumbing it out. They have pipes leaking in their laundry room, or they did, and they put a gutter to bring it to where the floor drain was, rather than fixing it. Now, that one is repaired, but it was there for months. And it took until the vice president came out to actually get something done with that. So I would say the summary of the conditions here is there's a disregard for the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. There are significant life safety concerns for the residents and fire staff. There's extreme disregard for the responsibilities and obligations of the owner and the property management. This is a property, as a fire chief, I'm concerned about, and that I'm concerned for the residents of those three buildings, and I'm concerned for the life safety of our own firefighters that have to go fight those fires. And these are the high-risk properties that we see bad things happen at, and it, from my perspective, can be preventable. Even if the fire is not preventable, the containment of that fire is preventable, given the sheetrock, the fire doors, the fire alarm system. All those pieces are meant to be there to keep these people safe. The rental ordinance we currently have contemplates a couple of things. We can, as a city council, you can suspend or revoke the license, and it also contemplates an action plan to be completed by the licensee. So as far as communication, we've communicated with the ownership and management that this proposed license suspension was coming before you tonight, and the residents have been mailed information facts about the proposed license suspension so that they were aware. The license suspension, we would propose a 90-day license suspension that would not allow them to rent vacant units or units that become vacant during the suspension, and require the management and ownership provide us an acceptable action plan to repair and remedy and remedied the code violations within 45 days. This does not displace anybody. This keeps everybody living there that does live there. It only impacts the vacant units or units that become vacant. So with that, I would stand for any questions the council would have.
Council, any questions for Fire Chief? Councilmember Keeley.
Chief, do you know when this building was purchased by this corporation?
It's my understanding it's about a year ago. I don't know the exact date, but it's within about a year.
Are you aware of any investments in the property since they've owned it? Outside of the work that appears to take them 7 or 8 months to finally start doing?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, council members, I would have to go look. I don't know that off the top of my head. I know they built a new clubhouse, but I think it was prior to this ownership. But right around that time, I know there's been some exterior upgrades over the years, but I don't know that they've been in the past year. I would have to look at the timeline of that, but.
Well, just in general, boy. Your presentation is it makes it hard to sit here and be objective, and when you see the life safety issues of these residents, and it makes me sick to my stomach to think, what is it like to live in an apartment with a moldy bathroom and a bathroom with no sheetrock and plastic or Visqueen on the wall, and it being that way for months. It's obviously a reflection of the ownership not really caring at all. But thank you. I feel like we have another. I was here 10 years
Country
ago,
Village.
and when we were forced to pull the license and displace over 100 families because of circumstances, I feel like this is a deja vu back to those days, and it's absolutely disgusting, and there's no excuse for it. Thank you.
Councilmember Gustafson.
I would agree with you, Councilmember Keeley. I was here when we revoked the last license for similar type things. I'm curious, I know we're going through the suspension because it takes a lot to move families, which we went through the last time around. But at what point do we end the suspension and say we revoke it? I mean, you're calling for an action plan, but will that plan include a date when this will be accomplished? So they go, here's our plan, we'll get to it as we get to it? I mean, because what we're doing by suspending and not allowing them to rent to others, we're still leaving people in harm's way in that building. And that's what concerns me. And these people pay very good rents, and I've seen the rents they charge over there, and they're not, for my mind, they're not getting their money's worth out of it, and it can be a safety issue for the residents of that building. And so that's where I kind of get a little uneasy about a suspension and not a revocation, because I know we're leaving people in that building knowing that there are problems in that building. So I hope we have a plan here as well to move forward should they decide they're not going to.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of the council, we would want to continue to move swiftly down the from suspension to revocation if we can't get an adequate action plan that has deadlines. I would be looking for further action, if they don't produce an action plan with suitable deadlines, particularly getting the life safety things fixed immediately. And also, if they fail to accomplish those deadlines that have been established within the action plan, we'd be back before you. And some of that is if we do go down the road of revocation, making sure that we do have the support system in there to support those residents that, in the fact that we do need to displace them, we would have a plan to provide assistance.
I would add our staff did a fine job of that last time to get other agencies involved, and I don't think anyone was left behind when that happened.
That's very correct. Yep.
Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I know I believe the rest of council also walked through the apartment building after one of the fires that was there. It's never good to try to relocate a fair number of people and families during winter. So I understand the process that is in place. I am a strong proponent of property rights. And I also understand that the building is under newer management. They've been there about a year. However, the lack of fixing the most important items and waiting and then seeing some of the repairs, that's completely unacceptable. One of the major roles of government, other than making sure you get water and your poop goes away, is that we step in when residents are experiencing fraud, when they're victims of fraud, or when they're victims of violence. This does look like those residents, in my opinion, are experiencing fraud. They are victims of fraud, in my opinion. I am sure there is nowhere in their lease that says, I'm going to pay you really good money to live in, and I just put it right out there, a shithole. There is no lease that says that. And they are paying decent money. I have looked at what the rents are in these apartments. It is at a level that they should have expectations that it is safe, in repair, and pretty attractive, actually, for that, the amount of money that they're paying. This is verging into as well where we are concerned that residents are being harmed. And that just takes it to a whole new level on this. So I understand it's been a year. And in business terms, that's, just a blink of an eye. But they better blink those eyes quicker, because this is absolutely unacceptable.
Okay, thank you. Chief, you present a very compelling finding for what you're asking for. And as Councilmember Schultz spoke to, we all walked through that building. And I remember when this group took possession of the building and did nice work to make the outside look good. Mm-hmm. But the inside, where people live and their health and their safety are in jeopardy, is when we step in to protect those folks who don't have a voice or don't think they have a voice, to ensure that their living conditions are safe and that they are healthy living in those conditions. I know that the owners of the building is here, and Chief, I'm going to ask them who would like to speak. Yes, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Matthew Byer. I'm an attorney with the law firm Lewis, Brisbois, Bisgard, and Smith. I live at 2601 Kyle Avenue North in Golden Valley. My office is counsel to the property owners in a lawsuit brought by the city. I believe the original complaint was brought in October. And the purpose of that lawsuit was to seek compliance with the fire code and some of the violations that were pointed out by the chief here. My office was appointed counsel to the owner. We've been working with Mr. Shepard since then. As the chief mentioned, we actually arranged for the inspection on November 9th. I think you saw my face in some of the video that was played. The purpose of that request was that the complaint that was filed in October obviously identified outstanding fire code and building violations, that we wanted to be sure that everybody was on the same page as to what violations were still outstanding. There were a number of fire door violations in some of the prior orders. We asked for that inspection to take place. Obviously, we want everything to be remediated as quickly as possible, but the purpose of the inspection was to have a baseline to work with Mr. Shepard and the city to develop that exact action plan that the chief is asking for right now. Council and I discussed negotiating a consent order, consent decree that would be entered by the court, whereby the building would address any outstanding code violations in a time and manner that would satisfy the city, of course, while also, of course, taking into account issues that the building is facing in terms of dealing with contractors and shipping issues. And on that note, one thing that I wanted to be sure to convey to the council is that many of the violations that we're repeating over the course of the last several months had to do with fire doors. You saw some of the pictures and the videos of those fire doors. Replacement fire doors and ADA compliant equipment on those doors were ordered back in October. They are scheduled for delivery in January. That is the best that we could do based with the vendors that we've are using to get that equipment. So the chief's presentation, of course, identifies a number of issues dating back to May. And if I can, I'd like to just provide a little more context to the chief's presentation, as well as Bridge's involvement in the property. As I believe you're aware, Bridge took over the property in December 2021. Actually, I understand, based on some documentation, with the Minnesota Department of Revenue. It was December 20th, 2021, so it's our 1-year anniversary of taking over the property. The issues that are being identified here tonight, admittedly, or at least go back to 2018. The agenda and the presentation reference number of violations, number of calls going back to 2018. That substantially predates Bridge's involvement, and yet Bridge is the one who is being potentially punished here.
But you purchased the property knowing that.
Yes.
That
Well,
was full disclosure for the buyer of the property.
respectfully, Madam Mayor, it's my understanding that during the due diligence process, Bridge requested information about outstanding code violations, fire code and building code violations that were on record with the city prior to purchase of the agreement, and none were divulged. The condition of the property in certain respects obviously is apparent, and the Bridge did, in fact, to your point, Councilmember Keeley, put in $1.3 million this year of improvements to the property, including dog parks, fitness centers, exterior issues, sidewalk repair, a number of other issues. And beyond that, they've also been partnering with Project Access to provide educational, employment services, and other community benefits to the tenants. Bridge has come into this property and come into this community with the intent of making the property, which apparently has some longstanding issues that clearly predate December 2021, improving the property, improving the experience for the residents, improving the property's relationship with the tenants and the people of Burnsville, and improving the relationship with the city itself. And if I may speak for myself, having come into this matter in October, it has always been our position since the lawsuit started that we are trying to cooperate with the city to come up with an action plan and a consent order to remedy whatever remains outstanding. I asked after that November 9th inspection for a proposed action plan, consent order, a starting point that we could begin negotiations, and I was not provided with that while the city worked to amend its complaint, which was filed on December 2nd. That answer has not quite come due yet, so the litigation is playing out on one end, and then, last week, we received notice that the city council is seeking to punish Bridge and suspend its rental license and cut off portions of its revenue source, revenue that of course is going to be put back into the building to make repairs and other improvements to the property. It appears to us that the frustration with the property and the concerns over the property and the potential issues that it poses to residents have been going on for several years. And yet Bridge is the one who is apparently preparing to bear the brunt of some long-standing issues. And it's been our position from the beginning that we want to cooperate and remediate the outstanding issues. And if my last point, and I can see that you'd like to address some things I make.
Yeah, because, listen, you're going to purchase a property. And if I were going to purchase a property, I will do my due diligence. And if I don't get the information, I will try and get the information before I buy the property. So for you to tell me that our staff did not give you the information that you needed before Bridge bought the property, I don't believe. You see, because it would be in your court to make sure that you have all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed before you buy a property. And I've been in the business of purchasing property. So, it's not compelling. Your argument is not compelling to me. So I understand, but the thing is, you have a property. You're saying that you're suffering what was prior to Bridge purchasing the property. Well, right now, we're dealing with what's going on presently. I walked through that property, and I had to say to the chief, we need to leave because my chest, I couldn't breathe, and I had a headache. Why? Because I believe there was toxins within the building that I may have been allergic to. So we left the building. So the thing is, it is about the health and safety of those residents. That's what's important today, and we're their last hope. Now, we're not taking any money, according to what the chief is asking. It's all of the vacant units that you can't have any more people coming into a building that is not safe for them. So all the other residents are going to be there, and they're going to be living in this building that is not healthy for them. Yeah.
Well,
You put in some really nice amenities, but the thing is, it's the health and safety items of that building and the mold and the kids that are sick in that building.
Well, I think that the issue here is, as you said, what is happening presently and how are we going to move forward? Now,
right.
the mold issues that you're speaking of, there's no mention of them in the lawsuit. To the extent that they're mentioned in the reports issued by the code enforcement officer, the most recent report issued, the final notice was issued on December 1st, which was the day before the complaint was amended. The number of issues that had been identified in the September 22nd and November 17th reports had diminished, I would argue, substantially by the December 1st report. There were still some violations. Some of those violations were not even violations. They were merely units that were not able to be inspected because minors were in the building, or minors were alone in the units, a dog was in the bedroom, those sorts of things. Regardless, those issues have been addressed before the December 19th compliance date set out in the notice. And in fact, Bridge requested that the rental department conduct their inspection of those repairs in anticipation of the renewal of the license for 2023 last week in advance of the December 19th compliance date. Just this morning, they received an email saying that the city is not prepared to move forward with that inspection. So we believe that those outstanding items on the December 1st report have been remediated, and we're just waiting for confirmation from the city. With regard to the fire department inspections, the December 6th reports for all three buildings reflected a substantial decrease in the amount of open violations, again, mostly relating to fire doors, all of which are scheduled to be replaced on January 11th. So our perspective is, yes, let's look at where we are now and let's look at how we want to move forward. There is obvious frustration with how things were handled, particularly over the summer. There are issues, even throughout the chief's presentation, pointing to inadequate repairs or failure to make repairs that have since been repaired within the last 2 months, I believe specifically with regard to the rain gutter, for example. But there are other issues that are included in the presentation that were outstanding for some time that have been remediated. The chief made reference to the fact that once the vice president got involved, some of these things started to be repaired. The vice president involved, the vice president's here tonight. There is clearly in the presentation and in the documents and the agenda a suggestion that that repairs are being ignored in May, June, July, and then there was this fire in August. The fire in August, my understanding, was arson that actually led to criminal charges to the person who set the fire. It was not some spontaneous fire as a result of the condition of the property. It's also my understanding that nobody was injured. I'm sure that has much to do with the work of the fire department, but the condition of the property didn't result in injuries to the residents during that fire. The building worked very diligently to make repairs to the building where the fire was, to assist displaced residents, to make sure that those residents were housed and were taken care of during the time when the building had to be repaired in order to be suitable for people to come back in. It was repaired and made suitable, and it was signed off on for people to come back in and live in it by the end of September. It's my understanding that Bridge did not receive complaints, and that the tenants who were displaced and had to go through that with the fire were actually very satisfied with the services they were provided during that difficult time when they were pushed out of their units. Since the fire, obviously much of the building's efforts were put towards making those immediate repairs that needed to be done to reopen those units and get those people back into their homes. Some of the outstanding violations were not addressed as quickly while those issues were taken care of. And since September, I would note again, the lawsuit was started a week after that building was opened on September 29th. The lawsuit, I believe, was started on October 6th. Since the building was reopened and since the lawsuit started, we have been putting even more resources and more time towards addressing those outstanding violations. And as I said, the December 6th fire department report shows substantial compliance. Again, the fire doors remain an issue that are scheduled to be repaired in January. The code enforcement report also shows that we have been increasing our compliance and remediating those issues. The question I think that we have is, what is the purpose at this point of suspending the rental license? Is it to bring them to the table and bring Bridge to the table and make sure that they comply? Because we've been at the table. We've been at the table for several months. I personally have been trying to negotiate an action plan or a consent decree, consent order, whatever label you'd like to put on it, whereby anything outstanding will be repaired in a time and in a manner that the city is happy with. We have been trying to cooperate with the city since before my involvement and certainly since my involvement. If the purpose of the suspension of the rental license is punitive, then it does seem, frankly, arbitrary to be punishing Bridge, who's been here for a year, and the first substantial fire inspection only just occurred last May. Respectfully, we're here, we're doing what we can to address these issues. We've been increasing our efforts to remediate the most important violations. We've been pouring money into the building to make improvements even beyond the scope of the violations set forth in the reports. We've been trying to work with the city's attorney to remedy, to move past the lawsuit. Suspending the license is not going to accomplish anything more than is already being accomplished. And for that reason, I would ask that you reject the resolution to suspend the license, or at the very least, take this under consideration at a future hearing while the lawsuit plays out and while those additional repairs that are scheduled to take place in January are completed, and the city can conduct its next inspection, which was requested last week, which apparently the city's not quite ready to move forward with. And if the city is still unhappy, then they can take up consideration of this matter again. But I think that we have been working very diligently, particularly over the last 3 or 4 months. We're going to continue to work diligently. We're going to make the property something that the tenants will be happy with. I think they're happier now than they were a year ago. I don't know that for sure, but my impression from what I've heard from my client is that they've gotten good feedback from the tenants. And I think we'd like to continue to have a good relationship with the city and the community. And I appreciate your time this evening.
Yeah. Councilmember Gustafson.
I'm trying to get my hands around this. I have a fair amount of commercial real estate in my background as well, and I can't imagine buying anything without somebody doing an inspection. So you're telling us that your client had no idea that repairs needed to be done on that building when they bought that property?
It's my understanding that they inquired with the city about whether or not there were outstanding code violations. They were told there were none,
That's not
and
what he
it is
asked.
also my understanding that, no, they did not have
So
their
they sent no
own.
one out to inspect, they just bought the building? Nobody
I'm
looked
not
at it?
aware that they did an inspection with regard to the Burnsville fire code
So
prior
there's
to
no
the May
diligence done on the
20.
building, they're just looking at numbers and deciding that's where they're going to plant their money?
If that's how you'd like to characterize it.
Well, that's how you're telling me, that they didn't do their diligence on it, so therefore they shouldn't be held accountable for what needs to be repaired. When people buy property that needs repair, they usually get that done. That's kind of how it works. The second part is that I'm kind of getting confused on. You tell me you ordered these fire doors in October and it's January before you can get them. And I respect there are some shipping issues, but you've known about it since May. What happened that 6 months between knowing about it and ordering the fire doors that were absolutely needed? I mean, anyone can see, a first grader can see those fire doors are bad.
There were the issues that the fire department found in May were our first notice of those code violations. We had a new team. You don't have to, agree with
No,
or
you
appreciate the
talk, you
explanation,
talk.
but I'll give you the explanation, which is that we had a new team come in, at the beginning of the year after the property was purchased. These code violations, including the existence of the PUD agreement, which I don't think we're really discussing tonight, but is mentioned in the lawsuit, were made to to Bridge at that time. There were people on the ground here at the building who made attempts to remedy these issues, but ultimately it became clear, and it didn't become clear fast enough, but it became clear that to address all of the outstanding issues that the fire department found required the vice president, higher ups of the company to come in, and they came in August after the arson. They have been heavily involved since then. I understand that the city's frustrated that things didn't happen more quickly between May and August, September timeframe when the focus was on repairing the building that was damaged by the fire. But I think the pertinent point is since I would say that August, September timeframe, the building has been working very hard to address all of these issues. And maybe not as efficiently as everybody would like at all times. I understand that frustration as well too, but they cannot be coerced into cooperating any more than they already are. They are cooperating. They are addressing these issues. The rental inspection or the rental license suspension would not kick them in the pants any more than they've already. They can't go any faster. They're here and they're working on it. That's I think all that I think we would want them to do is to address these issues. They're addressing the issues.
Before I go to Councilmember Schultz, Chief,
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I have a few context things I'd like to add is, remember, this is a licensed rental property with a professional manager, and they may not have had outstanding code violations when they took over it because the previous management may have responded and fixed those code violations, right? These were found in May. And in response to the arson fire earlier in the year, one of the fire doors did not open without having to put your shoulder into it, so it was stuck closed, right? So people were trapped in that corridor. And I will tell you, I was personally out there Friday evening on a fire incident. And my hope with this rental license suspension is that we get the management to continue to repair things and we don't have to write them up. Friday evening, I was on the phone with their regional manager because we were out there for a fire incident. And I find 2 space heaters heating an apartment that has no sheetrock in it that they've been reconstructing since before the first fire, and it has no heat in it. So now they're heating it with 2 oil space heaters and have extension cords out into the hallway, plugging them into outlets in the hallway. And that caused moisture on the other side of the wall to leak down into an outlet and short it out. And so the problem is every time we go out there, we continue to find more and more. I have never inspected a building 11 times. If you look at that chart that we had back there, it's like a roller coaster. And so my hope with the rental license suspension is that the ownership and the management continue to maintain the property so that we can fix all of the issues. And every time we go out there, I don't have to write a new order for fixing things, right? It would be nice if we could just fix everything and stay with whatever the issues are and fix them. But every time we go out there, it is new issues. And it is seriously frustrating from a city staff standpoint when you have a professional ownership and management that is unresponsive to these things that are clearly visible. So, thank you for taking that additional comment, so.
May I
Yeah.
respond briefly to a few of those points?
I'll get to you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schultz.
I do appreciate what you're saying on there are staffing shortages, there are shipping issues, metal products in particular. I get it. But walking through there, and I walked through all the buildings, I wasn't even into apartments. And there is no way I would live there. And I've lived in some shady places. It was beyond what a person would ever expect. And you walked through there, sir. And I'm not asking you to answer it, but I know there's no way in hell you would live there. Would not happen. Like, we all have our threshold. I am happy that now that upper management is aware, has walked through, has seen, that they are working towards fixing these things. Yes, the main focus is on a lot of life and safety things. But there were also a lot of just livability, and by that I don't mean paint color. I mean livability. A person has an expectation of a wall. I mean, that's a baseline expectation. There's a wall, a whole wall. So I am happy that these things are being repaired. I do understand that you are newer onto this because of the lawsuit, that you are working with city representation. But I mean, this is just not even in the realm of consideration that this is a livable place. I mean, I'm going to tell you that I'm probably your friendliest person on this council towards you. And if it wasn't winter, I'd be pushing for revocation. That's the level of unacceptable that I find this. Doesn't mean months from now, you're working towards repairing it and all that kind of stuff. Could be totally different story. I will be so thrilled. I will be very thrilled. I love that you want to be a good community member and provide a great place for people to live. But this is the situation that we find ourselves in now. We're finding ourselves in this situation. Your client is finding themselves in this situation, and the residents are too. Your on-site management, damn, man. I don't even know what to say about that. It's just, I feel for you on that, because that's painful. So, this is where we're coming from. And I also realize that as you're making your comments, you're addressing a council, but you're having to do so in a way that you are cognizant of an ongoing lawsuit. So I do understand, your framing of the responses back. I do get that. I really do. And I do understand what you're trying to do in the resolution that you're trying to bring. And I do understand that you are not just trying to be an attorney, you are trying to be a counselor, right? So I understand that. We do want to work with you. I do not see this as punitive, but I do see this as a level of seriousness of the situation that we're all finding ourselves in. I am very hopeful that you do your action plan, and it has dates, and they're realistic dates, right, that you can then complete, and that we can put this all behind ourselves. And you have a great place, and you have your residents in it, and they like to be there, and so there's not as much churn, and everyone's making money, and it's good. That's what we want. We realize that this is a business. We get that. That is my hope. But yeah, I can tell you that I absolutely will be voting for this suspension for 90 days. I did not tour the building prior to that fire. I did not deal with anything with that building. I'm only dealing with it as it is right now. I do understand the uphill climb that you have at the time of purchase. I do understand that. But this really needs to be, really needs to be addressed. So thank you. I appreciate it. You are advocating admirably on behalf of your client. I'm happy that your client's here. I'm happy that they're taking this seriously. So thank you.
Councilmember Keeley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know it appears that, we have obviously a very strong opinion about this. This council and this city has a long history, but even more recent years of always being open-minded, flexible, working with businesses, residents to resolve things. It is when we are pushed in a circumstance like this, May 10th, 57 violations, and we're sitting here December 20th, and there's still a third of those outstanding, and maybe they're all resolved. I hope they are. But we should never have been pushed 7 months, 10 days later and dealing with this, and that's really the problem. With all due respect to you and your role, legally, you've gotten involved in the last 2 or 3 months, but remember, all of this was clearly documented May 10th, and we, as a governing body, hold the property owner accountable. Doesn't matter if all that stuff was carried over and there was a problem with due diligence and it was unknown. It was all made known on May 10th. And shame on the management for not getting you involved earlier, or senior management. I believe it was probably our fire chief that pushed and did the work that you guys should have done to get the executives involved and resolve this more quickly. Ultimately, we're talking about people here. I mean, this is human beings and safe living conditions, not whether a parking lot's too big or too small or a sign or a setback. These are human beings living their daily lives in these units. And the pictures that we witnessed are pretty damning. And the fact that they have been there going back to 2018 just adds insult to injury, especially when you recognize today's date and you recognize May 10th, all 57 violations were brought to the attention of the property manager or someone of responsibility who clearly dropped the ball and didn't bother to tell the right party to get the attention necessary, because we would have avoided all of this, and to the benefit of the folks living in that complex. So you're still being, the company is being held responsible, and I appreciate the fact that you've gotten involved and things started to happen. Should have happened several months ago, and we can't just erase that. So I agree. I will be voting in favor of the suspension. I think, quite frankly, given the 7 months that has gone by and the lack of response until just recently, I don't think it's punitive. I think it's a response to a lack of response for many months on the part of the ownership. Good for you if you're finally getting in gear and taking care of business. You got 90 days soon. Thank you.
Did you want to rebut? Because I don't know if there is anything you can say.
It seems that might be the case, but there are a couple of points that I'd like to make regardless. The chief mentioned that each time he goes back, there's more and more violations. He mentioned a call on Friday, is my understanding, and he also mentioned that these space heaters were found in an area where there was missing sheetrock. There was work being done, and a general contractor had brought space heaters into the room.
You know,
But it's
that
also-
doesn't even make sense. I'm looking at the lawsuit. There are some really common sense things to do, and they're easy things to do, and they're not too expensive. If you took some of that $1 million and made these corrections, a dryer vent disconnection. These are life safety issues because of the toxicity that comes out of these things. A hole in the wall, the improper closure of a trash chute that is a huge fire hazard. Please, I don't know if there's anything you can say to us. that's going to change our mind, because I want to, are there residents in the audience? And yes, we have residents, and they're concerned because they have children. When we did this for Country Village, we had a mother and child with a child had been suffering, and to come and find out they've been breathing in, there was mold all over the place, and she brought in pictures. So we're their last resort. We're their last resort. And you've heard that this is about the human beings that live in our community, and we're their last resort. And our fire chief is asking for a suspension of your vacant units until you get all of this. So my my recommendation to you is to work with our people. In 45 days, you should have a plan and tell us when this is going to be done, because the chief will come back to us with a plan, and then when you're going to get, because when I look at all of these things, they're not hard, they're not very expensive, and you can get them done. Somebody's just not paying attention. And I believe Mr. McGraw is the manager of the building, and listen, take care of the building, make sure the people are healthy there. And because you've already heard, it's going to be a unanimous vote to go for the suspension. We're not punishing you. We're taking care of the residents of the building, and we care about you. You should have pride in your building and make sure that you have a property that people will want to live in and not get sick in. So,
Well, respectfully, Madam Mayor, that's why they purchased the property. That's why they've been making improvements to it. That's why they're going to continue to make improvements to it.
and,
I appreciate the council's time, and
And
suppose
we
if
look
any of the
forward to-
residents have any comments.
yeah, and we look forward to working with the ownership
Thank you.
to ensure that that happens. Did any of you want to speak? Who live in, and you should not be punished for having a voice.
I'm just afraid we'd take all night if we had to speak.
Please come to the podium and so we can hear you, because I also know that we have people from our code task force present. And just give us your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Pamela Speck. I'm in 1513 East Burnsville Parkway, apartment 315. I've been there since 2018, actually. And I can easily tell you that this past year has probably been the worst year that I've witnessed living there.
Okay.
As for a lot of the claims that were made, especially right after the fire, I actually worked really hard to create a GoFundMe to help those residents that were displaced. Contacted management several times trying to get their assistance in the matter, trying to get somebody on to help me out with, even just making sure to spread information, anything. It took well over a month before I could even get someone to reach out to the particular owner of the unit that the fire took place in. And I actually have spoken with the resident who lived there, who told me that they did nothing to help her. That there was, they basically just kind of let her fend for herself. That is where the majority of what little I could fundraise went to, was to help her find somewhere else to live, because from what I understood, she had been having to stay with a friend for well over a month or so. They hadn't moved her to a new unit. They hadn't done anything to help her out. And it fell on us as the community of residents to try to look out for one another. As for a lot of issues that have been outstanding, as you can probably tell, I'm disabled, and it is more of a recent disability. It has been a nightmare trying to live there with how little accessibility the building has. My roommate was one of the people that was trapped in one of those elevator rescues. And it has always taken several phone calls or even me walking up to the office to get things done. Speaking of things that have taken forever to get done, several months ago when it was still warm, I had made a request because a window of ours was not latching, and it was, causing issues, especially with heating or cooling. We were having issues with, wasps getting in and building a nest between the two panes, things like that, making basically the window inoperable. I got a call, I think Friday, finally scheduling somebody to come out yesterday to look at the window. And the first thing they did when the third-party contractor looked at it was go, yeah, this needs to be replaced. Now I have to wonder why, when I put in a request back when the weather was still warm, that it took all the way until the week before an impending blizzard for my window to get looked at. And now I understand why, since I just got the notice in the mail last night about this meeting. And it suddenly made sense why suddenly things that we had been complaining about were getting done.
Okay. We understand that we're your last resort. Yeah.
I do appreciate that you have done what you can to look out for us, because I can definitely say it's felt like a losing battle.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Members of the council, do you need anything else from the chief? Do you need to hear anything else? If not, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. A resolution for suspending the rental license for Parkview Flats is now in order. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the residents appreciate, and it was a great idea to send the notice to each of the units so that they got the notice of this meeting and that they can be here. So, and also it was good to see some of our co-task force review folks here, so thank you. And members of the council, there are no other items to come before us this evening. But before we adjourn, tonight is the third night of Hanukkah. And we are a community that says that everyone is welcomed. And I want to acknowledge all of our community members who celebrate Hanukkah. It is the festival of lights, and that we all stand together. We're also going to be celebrating Christmas, and it is about peace, love, joy, and goodwill. And so as a community that we should continue to care for one another. And Kwanzaa is also a celebration that's coming up, and that's also about unity and caring for the community. And tonight we did something about caring for the community at Parkview Flats. And so wishing everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy Kwanzaa, a Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year. So thank you to everyone, and let's continue to help one another and make sure that we are a community that says that we care and everyone is welcome here and everyone belongs here. So with that, unless anyone wants to say anything, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and a motion carries. Good night. Thank you for being with us. Happy holidays.